Hi, everyone, and welcome back to AARP. We are now launching into our six-part series on cooking for caregivers. I'm Lori Hendren. I work with AARP Illinois, and we are so happy to have you here today. But before we get started, I want to tell you a little bit about our remarkable caregivers. We have in our state 1.5 million unpaid caregivers doing remarkable work, balancing their own work, their own lives, taking their loved ones to doctor's appointments, making sure prescriptions are filled, caring for them in the hospitals and nursing homes and in their homes, making sure they can stay healthy. And we thank you for that. We have a little special video just for you, and then a word from Dr. Nzike. Thanks.
Coronavirus has affected many of our plans this year, but you can still take part in some of your favorite fall activities with proper precautions. Here are 3 fun and safe fall activities you can still do with your family. Visit a pumpkin patch. It's a great way to get outdoors with the grandkids. As long as you wear your mask and keep at least 6 feet from other people, you'll have a great time picking out a pumpkin for jack-o'-lanterns, homemade pumpkin pie, or seasonal decoration. Or go leaf peeping in a nearby state or national park. A scenic drive or leisurely hike to take in the fall foliage is one of the safer ways to get out and about. Check out our guide to some of the best leaf peeping destinations at aarp.org/travel. Or stay in and bake some delicious fall treats. Cooking or baking is a satisfying, stress-reducing activity and a great way to bond with kids or grandkids if you're isolating together. And who doesn't love a good apple pie? However you have fun this fall, stay safe. For more tips to navigate family life during the pandemic, head to aarp.org/home-family.
Hey there, Illinois. It's Dr. Nzike here with a special message for all Illinois seniors about vaccine boosters. As the holiday season approaches, it's imperative that those who are eligible receive their booster as soon as possible. You may be wondering, if I need a booster, does that mean that the COVID-19 vaccines aren't working? Not at all. Vaccines continue to work well to help prevent the spread of severe illness, hospitalization, and death caused by COVID-19, including the Delta variant. If you received a Moderna or Pfizer vaccine and you're 65 or older, you're eligible to get a booster 6 months after your second dose. If you received a Johnson & Johnson vaccine and you're 65 or older, you can receive a booster shot 2 months after your initial dose. When it comes to choosing which booster shot you will take, the CDC advises that the same vaccine that was used for your primary regimen be used for the booster. But you do have the option, the choice, to mix and match boosters with a single dose of any of the authorized vaccine boosters. Remember that mixing and matching vaccines may be considered for the booster dose only. Boosters are free, and you can receive them at your local pharmacy, from your primary care physician, and many other sites across Illinois. As you prepare to gather with your family, your grandchildren, other loved ones, take every precaution to protect the younger children who are not yet eligible for vaccination. Let's all work together so we can have a safe and healthy holiday season.
Hi everybody, Chef Amanda Pyle, and with me as always is Chef Joe. We're coming to you here from the Cookery, where for the next 3 days you'll probably be joining us to make some awesome fall favorite recipes.
We are also here this month to celebrate Caregivers Month, so we just wanted to give a real quick big shout out to all of you caregivers, especially through our time of COVID. Just a big thank you to everything you do, and hopefully we'll get some great recipes for you guys to give out to all the caregivers in your lives this Thanksgiving season.
Awesome. Well, I guess we better get going. What are we making today, Joe?
So let's talk about day one here. We are going to make some pork tenderloin sliders. We are going to put on those some bacon and sweet onion jam. Exactly. That's the right face to make whenever you talk about bacon jam. And talking about Caregivers Month, this is a great one where you can jar it up, give it out as stocking stuffers to everybody in your life, or you can give it early Thanksgiving present instead of a stocking stuffer there. And then what are we having with our pork sliders today?
We are going to have a warm potato and green lentil salad. So as you know, we like to make you think a little bit outside of the box on some of our recipes here. So we're introducing some new ingredients. It's perfect for fall because it has a really hearty Dijon sauce to go along with it. And then of course it's potatoes, which we got to have in every fall meal, I think.
And plenty of lentils, so it's still really good for you.
There you go.
Feel good about eating it while
and they're
you are.
green, so
Exactly.
that's extra healthy.
Green always means healthy.
Cool. Well, should we get started with our pork loin first?
I think we should, so let's get that going. First thing, we're going to need to clean it up. So we have our pork loin here. You'll notice that it looks pretty clean, but I still have that little bit of fatty stuff here. Now, what we're looking to cut off here is called elastin. There are a couple different kinds of connective tissue. One is collagen. That one is what you get where it melts down. It's really soft, melt in your mouth kind of fat. Elastin, on the other hand, no matter what you do with it, no matter how much of it, how you cook it, how long you cook it, it is still going to taste like shoe leather. So we're going to get all of that gone. When you're cleaning it, you can find that there's these layers where fat kind of wants to rip off. And if you take your knife and you can just follow along that, and that'll really help you get that first big chunk of fat off to start working the rest. And I'm not cutting deep. The knife I'm using is a boning knife. Shallow blade to help you get around stuff, nice and firm. When I'm going here, I'm not digging into my meat, not pushing down too hard. I want to save all of it I can. And then there's that just first big old piece of fat that we're cutting off. Then we're going to go through, and I want to get all of this other pieces going down. That is that silver skin. That's the elastin that we need to cut off so we don't have to chew through it. So I'm going to take the tip of my boning knife, poke up under there, and I'm trying to stay as close to on top of that meat as I can so I still save it all. And then we're going to go under, and I didn't even get into that silver skin there. It's really down deep. So we're going to, again, poking through, cutting underneath, and then pull back and just saw blade straight through. After you get that first piece, it's going to get a lot easier for you because you can poke right underneath the rest of them, keep going through, and trim off the rest of that fat. Now, all of this fat on the top here isn't the silver skin. You can tell because it's not real attached deep down to the meat. And I'll still run my knife, get most of that. But if you have little pieces of it, you can keep it. It's not really worth digging under there, taking off a bunch of the meat just to get that tiny little bit of fat. The silver skin elastin pieces are really what we're looking to get.
Now, Joe, could you use a pork tenderloin or a pork loin?
Absolutely. You can do either of them here that you want. This is actually a pork loin, and it's a really pretty piece. The one main difference you're going to find, tenderloin are obviously a lot tender, more of a cut of a meat. The name gives it away there. But with pork loins, you'll usually have a couple pieces where you have a layer of fat right in the middle. And you don't cut those out. You'll just cook it with it. It would take off too much of the meat when we dig through. The issue you get with that is just because you have a little more of that connective tissue in the middle. You got to chew through it. With this one, though, if you can find a pork loin that doesn't have that, you're not going to find the same issue, and tenderloins won't have that. The tenderloin will just be the nice, clean piece of meat, and you won't have any of that connective tissue worked into the middle of it, but either of these cuts are going to work great. And that's just about all we're going to do.
The tenderloin is probably a little easier to work with.
It is. It's also going to be a little more expensive for you per pound.
Well, that makes sense, right?
Oh, yeah, definitely. And so that's about all we're going to work with. I'm going to get a little more there. But the rest of that we're going to leave just because it is the fat instead of the silver skin. It's going to add a little more flavor when we go through and sear it off. And then you can probably tell here, there's that little bit where it's starting to go in the middle. So I could rip into this piece of meat, go through, clear it all out, but I'm not going to have pretty pork chops anymore afterwards. So I'm going to leave that in, cook it with it in there just so it stays nice in one pretty piece. And now we're ready to season it up. So I'm going to get my hands washed up really quick because I have to get into my salt and pepper jar, and then Jeff's going to get in there. And now I'm going to mince up some herbs. You might think, Joe, you have a raw meat cutting board. You should probably switch it out before you do that. But my herbs are just going to be marinated for my pork anyway. So you don't need to waste another cutting board. It's all going to get cooked to the same temperature, so we can just mince it all up.
I like that.
So I have time here. I have some fresh rosemary leaves, and I'm just going to give it a rough chop so it gets nice and small, can cover up our piece of pork. My pork I'll hand over to Chef Amanda here just so she can get some salt and pepper on either side of him.
Okay.
And I'm just going to do our mince motion through my rosemary a few times. So my hands are on top of my knife. I'm splaying my fingers up. And I'm keeping the tip of my knife down, pulling up the heel, and just going back and forth, scraping it together. And I'm just working until it gets nice and small pieces.
And I've just salted the top, and I'm going to go ahead and salt the bottom as well and just kind of roll it around on the board to make sure that I get all of those seasonings easily distributed. We're using kosher salt, our favorite kitchen salt, but sea salt, Himalayan salt, anything like that, it's going to work good. I'd probably stay away from the iodized salt. We get plenty of that in our other grocery store foods that we buy. So try to opt for something a little more healthy here. And I love pepper, so since we're going to be having this for lunch, I'm gonna go hard on that. And then I also have a skillet over here that I'm preheating. If you've cooked with us before, then you know we love a cast iron skillet for pretty much anything we can use one for. So I've got one of those heating up. Why is it important to get that skillet hot before we add our meat in there, Joe?
It's a great question. So we're looking for a sear. Caramelization is going to equal flavor, and it doesn't always have anything to do with being sweet when you're talking caramelization. We want it to be nice and hot. We want to hear that sizzle when she puts it down. That's going to start setting that sear. It lets all the natural juices coming out of that pork caramelize onto the outside, and it sets a really good crust. If it's not hot enough before you put it into the pan, it's going to release all that liquid slowly, stop the pan from setting a real nice crisp sear on it. If it's too hot, if you have it really hot, it's going to scorch it before your sear releases and sets. So you want to get it all nice and hot when you put it down, and then have it at the medium-high heat range after it gets that sear started, so you don't oversear.
All right, so I'm rubbing down the pork loin here with a little bit of oil.
And I'm going to get the rest of our rub ready for it. So these herbs that I just minced, it is our rosemary and our thyme. That's going to go into my bowl. Also into that bowl, I have 2 tablespoons of brown sugar, and I have a tablespoon of Dijon mustard. If you guys have not worked with Dijon, it is the sauce maker. It adds a nice little kick to anything. And I'm just going to give all that a quick stir together.
Is that grapefruit?
That is not. That is French Dijon.
Isn't that what grapefruit is?
Yeah, it's just a brand of it. It's not grapefruit. I should have said it was, though, just for the fun. And then we have a little paste here. Sugar, mustard, herbs, and I'm just going to get that on our pork here, and I'm going to give it a good rub.
Now, we used all fresh herbs here, but if we wanted to go the dry route, I mean, winter is upon us. We're not going to have fresh herbs outside anymore, so is there a way that we can get around that?
There sure is. So anytime a recipe is calling for fresh herbs or dry herbs, you can always interchange the two. The basic rule you want to keep in mind is you need 1/3 of the amount of your dry herbs as you do fresh. The reason for that is that as you dry your herbs through the course, it's losing liquid and it's keeping all of that flavor. I don't know if you guys can hear this on your end, but she just set our pork in and it had a beautiful searing sound. That's how you know it's plenty hot and it's ready to go.
Man, that sounds amazing.
Well, it's exactly what I was saying about herbs. I'm sorry not to confuse you halfway mid-story. But you want to use 1/3 of the amount. The flavor in your dried herbs gets concentrated, so you need less of it to get through that same amount of flavor. If you're making a sauce, we use herbs in our marinara sauce all the time. When you add them is going to be different also. If you're using fresh herbs, you're always going to add them at the end of your recipe, almost just a seasoning, just until you get the right amount of flavor. If you're doing dry, you want to put them in earlier. They're already dried out, so you need some of that liquid in your sauce and you're filling whatever you're making to bring out that flavor of your dried herbs, and it just needs a little bit longer to do so.
Cool. All right. Well, while that's here, let's make some bacon.
Oh, music to my ears.
All right. So, the first thing let's talk about is I have some Applewood smoked bacon here. 5 slices of that. Any bacon is going to work. I'm opting for a thick bacon here. And all I've done is cut it into some really small, tiny cubes. And I'm going to pan fry it in a skillet, just like we're doing the pork here. Just need a bit smaller of a skillet. And we're going to get that going and rendering out the fat where it gets nice and crispy. You could do it, in your bacon slices and then chop it after, but I find this to be easier, and we're going to get some really good crunchiness all around all the pieces of bacon. It's also going to go a lot faster. While that is cooking, we're going to go ahead and start cutting up some shallots and some onions. So, Joe, do you want to man the pans, and I'll do a little knife skills lesson?
Oh, sounds good to me.
All right.
Anything that gets me closer to bacon.
So I've got my 1 tablespoon of butter. that's going to be ready for when I'm adding in my shallots and my onions. We're going to reserve the bacon fat, add the butter to the fat. Sounds like it's going in a wonderful direction. And right now I'm going to dice up my onions and my shallots. This calls for 4 shallots and 2 medium-sized sweet onions. Well, I really like the flavor of mixing onions together, so I have a Vidalia, which is known as the sweetest yellow onion, and then a red onion, which most people wouldn't think of as sweet, but when it cooks, it is sweet. So it kind of changes sides once you cook a red onion, in my opinion. So I like the flavor and the color of both in this bacon jam, so I'm going to go 1 and 1. This one's very large, this one's very small. Together, they're going to make 2 mediums. And then I have 4 shallots. So I'll go ahead and get started. We're going to cut off first the top of the onion, leaving the root intact. Then we're going to cut through the root of the onion, peel it on open, and get rid of any of those really slimy parts of the onion.
This is actually 5 weeks of culinary school in about 5 minutes. We say that all the time and people think we're joking. We are not joking.
But it's also a real time saver in the kitchen. Once you master this chopping an onion skill, it really speeds your time up.
Oh, yeah.
Now that I have my onion cut in half, I'm going to go ahead and insert some horizontal cuts back to the root, but without going through. And I have my hand flat on top of the onion. Keep my fingers out of the way, and I'm just progressing through the onion and moving my knife up a little bit to get as many horizontal cuts as I want. The smaller my cuts and the more cuts I do horizontally going up, the smaller my end result of the onion. Now I'm going to do exactly the same thing and move vertical through my onion, but not through the root. And once I cut down, I've got a really nice dice with no tears.
And then while she is chopping that, I'll show you guys what we got with our pork, which is going to make its way to an oven. So we have our sear set on that. I'm taking it to a 400-degree oven. We're going to bake it until it's 145 degrees in the center. That is your safe heating temperature for pork. And then we'll take it out and let it rest. So I'm going to get this bad boy in the oven.
The safe heating temperature for pork has actually decreased over the years. Used to be much higher, 165, I think. And now they're saying 145 is safe. And I was just so happy when they made that change because I always felt like my pork chops were so dry. And now it's like a whole different world to eat pork at 145. All right, so there is 1 onion. How's our bacon looking over there, Joe?
Oh, our bacon's getting nice and rendered. You won't ever have to guess when your bacon starts rendering. You will start to see the fat pooling all the way around in your pan. And always save it. At my house, I save my bacon fat whenever I make it. Is it the healthiest fat to cook with? No. But it has great bacon flavor if you're just making eggs in the morning. Use a little bit of bacon grease instead of vegetable oil. Change your life.
We're going to cut the red onion exactly the same way. And then as soon as that bacon is comes out, we're going to reserve some fat and save the bacon off to the side. These onions are ready for you, Joe. The bacon is done. And then I will start the shallot. Difference between a shallot and an onion. Well, shallots are a little bit sweeter, very well known in French cooking, and they have just not quite as pungent of an onion flavor. So you'll find them really often in like salad dressing, things where you're going to eat them in their raw state, because they're just not as, like I said, pungent, harsh, flavorful as a red onion or a yellow one. All right, onions are ready. Now we're going to go on with the shallot. So now I'm going to just put this off to the side. Shallots are a little bit trickier, but they actually work in pretty much exactly the same way. We're going to cut off all the tops first. If you're really bothered by the shallots and the onions, and your eyes are watering, you could always pulse these just very ever so slightly in a small food processor.
Your bacon will start to pop.
It smells delicious. Then for the shallot, right through the root again, just like we did those onions. This bacon jam is great on pork, but it's also good on a burger with an egg on it. Yum.
Or, hear us out, ice cream.
Or on a spoon. Or on a cream cheese bagel
With
or English muffin in the morning.
Cream cheese on a cracker with the bacon jam.
Really anything.
Yeah. Put bacon jam on it and I'll eat it.
It makes a perfect gift to give somebody if you want to can it. If you saw our last season, we did some canning tips. We'll do some canning tips tomorrow as well. If you join us for our workshop tomorrow, it includes the pear jams that we're going to make. We can talk a little bit about the canning tips there again.
Our bacon is coming out nice and crisp.
Oh, that was amazing.
Not only, like Chef was saying, it's faster than if you would do the whole strips in your bacon at once. It also, now you don't have to cut it up.
Mm-hmm.
That step is already finished.
Because you'd need a whole separate board from the original, you know. There you go. All right, I almost have my shallots peeled. When I try to buy the shallots, I try not to buy the split ones, but they were kind of limited this morning. But the split ones are harder to work with because they have like two pieces kind of fused together into one. So they have two parts to peel.
My luck, every shallot I grab ends up being a split shallot.
They're so good, though.
They are worth a little bit extra.
I think they're in every holiday meal I make. They're just so sweet. They don't get enough credit. All right. Now we have our shallots. We're going to process through these in the same way pretty much as we did those onions, but less cuts. So hand flat on top. Maybe just one little cut right through the center horizontally.
That sizzle you may have heard is our onions going into our pan with some of the reserved bacon fat.
Oh, yummy. I think the butter goes in there, too.
Sure does. I'm going to grab that.
Right here.
Perfect. Amazing.
So we're going to saute those about 10 minutes or until they're tender. And then we're going to add the shallots. And then it's going to get some brown sugar to make it all sweet. Some balsamic vinegar for color, brightness, acid, and more sweetness. With the shallots, I concentrate on more vertical cuts, just because it's easier. All right.
And then instead of doing one shallot all the way through, she went and did her shallots just in steps. That way, when she goes through to rock them out at the end, she doesn't have to stop and cut her other directions in her shallot. Just kind of helps you speed up, which makes cooking easier. The faster your prep work goes, the faster you get to the actual fun part, cooking, smelling.
All right. There we have it. 4 shallots. That was a doozy. Woo! All right. Then we're going to add, after those cook down a little bit, our shallots, our vinegar, our sugar, and then some salt. And then we're just going to cook until the vinegar dissolves. Going to soak up all of that delicious liquidness. Going to give it a ton of color. And then after that, we're going to add our chives, our thyme, and our bacon back into the pan. So we'll do our chives next while we're still waiting on that to cook. That way all of our mise en place is done, or all of our things in order and ready to go into the pan, so that we can move on and do some other things while our jam is cooking. Oh, I missed a chef.
Quick temp check on our pork. Depending on how hot your pan was, how long you seared your pork tenderloin, it might need more or less time in the oven.
And also how big it was, too, right?
Absolutely. How thick a piece of meat it was when you bought it. Tenderloins are obviously not going to need quite as long as pork loin would. Just check it 10 minutes or so after you put it in the oven. It might not be close. It might be getting there. That way you just have a general idea of how much longer it's going to need, so you know what to set your time.
Thermometers are the key.
Yeah.
Look at how pretty that is with the two colors of onion. I love that. I rarely eat raw onions anymore now. I just love caramelized onions so much. They just taste so much better. All right, I think we're looking pretty good here. I'll cut up our thyme next. So here we have some leaves of thyme. And then we have our chives. This is sadly probably the last chives from my garden, since we're starting to get those cold freezes now at night. I'm going to have to either figure out how to bring all the herbs in or something. So there's two different ways you could do these. I often will just use the scissors and just snip, 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 and that works really great. But I've already got my knife and my board out, so I may as well just do a nice little chop. I find that chives are the easiest herb to grow. So easy that I never plant them, and they just keep growing back. I never water them. I never do anything to them, and they just keep growing. It's amazing.
Don't plant chives unless you always want to have chives.
Yeah, or use them in a pot.
Mm-hmm.
Mine are in a pot. They never overrun anything, but every year they grow back. It's pretty amazing. All right, so our chives are all nice and cut there. Our thyme, we'll just kind of remove the leaves best we can from our stems here.
Some of the tiny little stems that are attached to those leaves, you don't have to worry about.
Totally.
We're going to chop them down. They're going to get mixed in with our jam. It's the main ones in the center that are thicker that we want to get rid of. They just have a little bit more of a woody texture and aren't going to break down as much. So we get those out the best we can, but absolutely don't sit there 40 minutes painstakingly removing every single leaf from the thyme.
Well, and this thyme is so fresh. You can tell because it's not dried at all. Usually those leaves are a little drier.
Mm-hmm.
This is really, really beautiful.
Our onions are getting nice and softened. Looking amazing.
Sometimes I'll put the whole sprig of thyme and then stir it. The leaves will fall off naturally, and then I go back in and pick out the stems. In this particular jam, it's going to be hard to find them, so I don't want to do that. But like Joe said, these little ones are totally fine. We're going to chop those up. We won't even know that they're there. All right, I think I'm over the tears from the shallot and onion craze there.
It may be a placebo, but I find chewing mint gum helps cut down on your onion tears.
And I love chewing gum.
What I know does for sure is if you wear a big pair of swim goggles.
Oh, I'll do that next time.
I meant to bring you a pair today. I totally forgot.
Jeez.
I know.
All right, how are we looking over here?
I think we're about ready to add in our shallots.
All right, let's do it. So where are we at in our recipe here? Reduce our heat to low.
Done.
Okay, add our shallots, our vinegar, our sugar, and our kosher salt. And then turn your heat back up. So we turned it down initially just to not get so much splatter from the vinegar.
Vinegar does splatter. If you guys have ever used balsamic glaze, it is just balsamic vinegar that you cook down like this with nothing else until it's all syrupy. If you do it, though, your kitchen is going to be a splattered mess when you're finished.
Oh, yeah.
Balsamic splatters like nothing else.
Looking good and smelling awesome.
Yeah, it is. If you guys are cooking along, this is about the time you might be tempted to stick your face in this. Don't. It's very hot. Let it cool down, and it's going to be worth the wait, I promise.
So we're wanting our onions and our shallots to be tender and brown. So about another 15 minutes, we're going to let this go. And while we're doing that, we'll go ahead and make our quick potato salad.
Sounds
the last
good to
step
me.
here is just to add our fresh herbs at the end.
The other thing you'll notice when it starts cooking down is that brown sugar is going to mix in with your balsamic vinegar, and it's going to start looking thicker. It's going to get more jam-like as it cooks. Leave her sit, give it a stir every few minutes or so, just so you know nothing's sticking to the bottom, and then we'll get moving on our potato salad. If you were curious about the pork, it was a little bit over 100 degrees. I put our timer on just about 7 minutes or so, and then we'll check it again if it goes on.
All right, I have our thyme chopped up along with our chives. I'm going to put that right next to our pan so that it is ready to go.
Perfect.
And then, here, we'll just flip this guy over. Ta-da!
Another tip to save yourself dishes in the kitchen. Flip your cutting board if you need.
All right, so here we go. We're going to make this warm lentil and potato salad. We've done a few steps ahead here, so red potatoes first are always my choice for this, but Yukons would work equally well. I just like red potatoes better. And then we're using a green lentil. A split pea would also work very well here. If you couldn't find either of those, you could use quinoa. You could use farro. You could use tabbouleh or cracked wheat.
Yep.
Basically any grain that you want to add into it. And it's really just about giving it a little bit more texture, but also a little bit more health benefits along the way. So we've got our potatoes. All we did was dice those down real small and cubed them and then boiled them in a little bit of salt water so you can see about the sides. So just like any basic potato salad. What do I love about reds and Yukons? Well, you don't have to peel them. So I'm going to pay the little extra money every single time so that I never have to peel a potato. It's my least favorite job in the kitchen is peeling apples and potatoes. So Joe has cooked those ahead of time for us. And he's also cooked the lentils. You're just going to cook the lentils according to package directions, or in your recipe, we gave you kind of a how-to with 4 cups of salted water to, I think, a half a cup of lentils. So it seems like a really weird ratio, but they do take that much water to cook. If you end up with a little extra water at the end, just pour it off, but ours soaked up every last little bit of water in the pan, did not? Yep. Absolutely. And I mean, they almost triple or quadruple in size. So they do take on a lot of water and hold on to it. So we've done those 2 steps for us ahead of time. So I guess now we need to get the bacon going, Joe?
We sure do.
All right, let's do that. I'm going to get this. Oh, my gosh. Look at that.
Yeah, let me get you guys a close-up of what's going on in our bacon jam. It's cooking down. You can tell the bubbling just looks a little thicker than when we first put it in. And then we are just about ready to add in our bacon and our herbs and let it finish cooking down.
Yeah, so you could slice your bacon ahead of time, and that's what we're going to do today just to speed the process up again. But you could also cook your bacon in strips and then cut it at the end. So either way is going to work fine for this potato salad. So I'm going to go over here. I'm going to actually grab the same pan that Joe was using for pork before, because why not cook more pork with pork? I'm going to slide this guy back to the burner behind and let it keep going on its kind of medium to low heat there. And we'll keep watching that. And then we're going to put our pork pan right back on the burner, and we're going to cut the bacon and then put it right into there and get it cooking. So again, I'm doing this really just to kind of speed it up, and because we skipped how to cut the bacon in the first video, or the first part of this recipe to keep it moving. But I like to go in half first, and then I like to go long ways in half. And I have my skillet heating up, because again, we want to hear that sizzle, that initial crisping, right when we put the meat into the pan. And then I'm just going to go against the grain here until I get it in some nice cubes.
And then, folks, I am adding in our bacon into our bacon jam. And then, like she was saying, if you're someone who doesn't love onions as much, you can have more bacon in this and less onions. Mm-hmm. The rest of the recipe is going to work the same. The bacon and the onions are just kind of there for the body of it, what we're really snacking onto. But if you're more just a bacon person, you can do it with just 1 or 2 shallots and a bulk of bacon. Still do the balsamic vinegar the same, brown sugar the same, and cook it down the exact same.
Gosh, it looks beautiful.
It looks good.
Glistening. It's delicious. It's full of protein. What caregiver wouldn't love that as a gift? And then they can share it with those they care for. All right, bacon is in the pan. I'm starting to hear a little bit of sizzling going on. I'm going to get rid of my bacon board. Look at that.
I just stirred in my herbs into the bacon jam, giving it about another 30, 40 seconds or so. I'm going to shut the heat off. We don't need a ton of time since we're using the fresh herbs. There's no liquid that needs to let flavor cook out. It's all ready to go. Now we can really start to hear the sizzle. I'm not even sure you guys can hear me over the sound of all this sizzling.
That just looks delicious. It smells so good in here.
Off camera, I've tried to stick my hand in it twice, and Chef Amanda said to slap my hand away.
I will cut fingers off. Yeah.
It's all for a good cause.
All right, so you're getting some bacon going for the potato salad. Awesome.
And then what is our dressing for this potato salad? My favorite part of any potato salad is the dressing that goes along with it.
Well, after we get this cooked, the olive oil goes into the pan with the bacon fat, and we're making kind of like a hot bacon dressing.
Hot bacon dressing.
The day of bacon. The day of pork.
I'm not sure how many times in my life I've used the word hot bacon dressing together, but I promise you it's not nearly enough. All right. Let me give you a shot of Chef Amanda, and we will get going with our dressing.
Yep, we do need to cut down some garlic cloves.
Garlic is another great lesson. I know it's really tempting just to grab your, in a jar, already minced garlic at home.
And no shame, I have one of those in there too. But you're never going to get the same flavor that you would out of a fresh clove of garlic if you're cutting it yourself.
True. All right, so we're going to saute some more shallots into here, some celery, and some garlic into the hot olive oil mixture for 3 minutes. So after the bacon comes out, all of this good stuff goes in. So we'll go ahead and break down the celery first.
And our bacon jam is finished, folks.
Oh my gosh. Smells amazing.
You can see all that color and flavor that the pan we seared the pork in is releasing. Those bits that are getting released with all that bacon fat is called the fine. So a little French term for you guys there.
Joe's going to peel my shallot. I'm almost to the point where my hands don't work anymore.
That is your trade-off with shallots. They are a pain to clean, but they're delicious.
I'm just going to give a little rough chop to my celery here. Okay, and then that's done. And then for our garlic, we need, I think, 2 cloves. Yep. So I'm going to cut the top off here because I know we're going to use this between all of our recipes today. Pop off a couple cloves. These are kind of small, so I'm going to do a little extra.
Garlic is one of those things I measure with my heart.
That is a good way of putting it. Because, you know, a clove is different every time you pull one. Really just, you know, depends on what size your garlic clove is. So if they're a little small, I usually grab it onto a couple extras. All right, and I'm going to take that into a slice first. Really popping over there. And after I get my slices, I can go back with the rack and chop. Always pushing down and away from my blade and not up.
Not to interrupt the rock chop, but we have a finished pork loin, folks.
Oh man, Now, should we cut into that right away, Joe,
Oh,
or do we let it rest?
Not. We
Okay.
should let it rest. So for a piece of meat this size, 10 or 15 minutes is going to be what you want to let it rest. The smaller the piece of meat, the less rest time it needs. So for a chicken breast is another thing you might do a lot. That might only need 5 minutes if it's a smaller one.
Okay.
What we want to happen is our meat to cool down. As it cools, the liquid that it released while it was cooking reabsorbs into the fibers of the meat, and it keeps it nice and moist for you. As soon as we cut into it, it's like a water balloon. If it's still hot and that liquid hasn't reabsorbed yet, it's going to fall out. I'm sure I've done it. I'm sure all of you have done it at home. You try to cut into a piece of meat too early. You're excited to eat it, and then your cutting board is just basically water. It just keeps leaching out. Let it sit for about 5 or 10 minutes, and you won't have that problem.
Bacon going into the bacon bowl.
My favorite bowl in the kitchen.
Looking perfectly crispy. I want to get any of those bits out of the bottom. Now, let's say you burnt your bacon here. You want to stop and probably not use your oil and make your dressing and saute everything else in there because then everything will taste burnt. So if you had that unhappy accident, just get butter or something like that and saute your veggies. That way you don't pass on that burnt bacon flavor. I'm saying that because we came pretty close.
Or if you still have bacon fat left over from your bacon jam that you stick out, you have to do that.
Ooh, there you go.
Use the same bacon fat.
Perfect. He did tell you to save your bacon fat earlier, and there you go, Joe. All right, so now we're going to add our shallots into the pan, right, with our olive oil. That.
Another thing I see a lot is people adding in their garlic as soon as they're adding in shallots or their onions or their peppers or anything else. You want to do garlic towards the end. Garlic cooks a lot faster and it burns really quickly. Compared to other vegetables, when you get it to the done compared to when it's burnt, there's not a whole lot of time there with garlic. So you wait until everything else is cooked down most of the way, gets nice and softened, and then you're throwing your garlic in just towards the end. And the rule of thumb there is just until you can really start to smell the garlic. When it gets done to the point it's supposed to be, it is really going to smell garlicky. You will not have to second guess whether or not it's the right point in time.
Alrighty. Yep. And now I think we're ready for the garlic. And I'm just at a very low to medium heat. And I'm stirring constantly. And I'm also scraping off all of those bits. And then I'm going to need that red wine vinegar over there, Joe.
Absolutely.
And then some of our whole grain Dijon mustard.
Will do. Red vinegar.
Thank you. Perfect. 2 to 3 tablespoons of the red vinegar. And 2 teaspoons of that.
2 teaspoons.
Yep. And now we've made us a little hot vinaigrette.
Delicious. I'm going to grab us right in front of me. We have a big tossing bowl.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if you're doing this for a plating something for a party, want it to look really nice, go ahead and have a separate tossing bowl. That way your plating bowl doesn't get all messy while we're just mixing it together. Now, if you're just making it for a family dinner, sit down, not as big of a deal. You don't have to make the extra dish. But if you're bringing it over to your favorite caregiver, want it to look all nice for them, go ahead, mix it in a separate bowl, and then you can move it to the plate you're going to serve it in, top it with some fun garnishes.
All right.
Sorry,
so, Joe, you're going in with lentils and then potatoes, right?
So I have my red potatoes here in our bowl that we cooked ahead of time, and I have my lentils, and I'm just going to add these together. And there we are.
Oh my God.
Lentils
so
and
yummy.
potatoes.
All right. And then our bacon.
Bacon going right on in. Gorgeous.
Fresh
parsley.
Yep, we're going to chop up just a little bit of fresh parsley. I want to see a tiny bit of mustard. Stir a bit more in.
Mustard's another one of those. Measure it with your heart. If you love mustard, if you do another tablespoon or so, it's not going to hurt.
Well, and I love the stoned round here. That way you get those little pops of mustard.
With our parsley, I'm just kind of shaving up the stems. That's going to get most of your big leaves off. And just like I said with the thyme. Oh, tossing the dressing. Sorry, I got distracted. I had to watch the dressing.
All right.
Parsley stems. The big ones at the bottom, you can save and use for stock. You're not going to want to eat them. They have a pretty woody texture. If you have a freezer bag of veggie scraps, though, you can throw them in there, make a big batch of stock when you're finished. Just like with the thyme, though, those smaller leaves I'm not necessarily as concerned with.
Oh my gosh.
And we're going to give it a rough chop. Any kind of leafy herb you're doing, cilantro is the same way. If you want to get it chopped up, it's pretty all over the place with your leaves. So I just kind of bunch it up generally, and then you can run your knife through it.
Look at it. Pretty bad.
Oh, man.
That looks awesome. I get first dibs on tasting. Hey, there's.
Oh, that's my job. A little bit of fresh parsley in there. Another quick little toss.
I love flat leaf parsley more, personally.
Flat leaf parsley definitely has more flavor. The only time that I would prefer curly leaf over is if you're just using it in a garnish and want that texture with the leaves. Delicious.
Salt, I think, and a pinch of pepper.
I agree.
It's so good. Yummy.
So
Especially when you
bacony.
get
That's
the bacon.
delicious. Yep.
This dressing would be really good on a spinach salad, too.
Oh, yeah, it would. Obviously, a spinach salad that has bacon bits on it.
Delish.
Delicious.
Well, should we toast our buns off a little bit,
I think
Joe?
we should toast our buns and we should slice up our pork. For
All
our
right,
slice.
so you slice some pork.
Perfect.
I'll toast our buns.
Toasting your buns, you can do kind of any way you want to. If you have a pan just on the stove, you can do a little bit of butter, toast them right down on there. If you have your hot oven ready after you seared your pork, you can just spread some butter on them, toast them in the oven the same way. You can actually use a toaster if you have a toaster in the fit. Getting them a little toasted and crispy, though, is always going to make them taste better.
And we're using a brioche bun here, which you can find pretty much anywhere anymore. It's more of an egg-based dough with a much sweeter and fattier flavor in existence, which makes it more delicious.
All about fattier.
So I'm just rubbing down my cast iron skillet with some butter. This could be olive oil if you want it. It's trying to stay a little more healthy. And I'm just going to go flat side down in there. Let those get just one more extra layer of flavor, as if we didn't have enough different layers of flavor going on.
Can you ever have enough layers of flavor?
Well, and it's not even just about the flavor with toasting the bun. It's also about the texture.
Oh,
You're giving it another crispy layer to go with your really nice, meaty, juicy pork, and then you're going to have this delicious, creamy thing.
Fun fact, me and Chef Amanda have a band on the side, and our name is Layers of Flavor.
I can't wait to get started.
All right, let's slice up some pork. It's what we're all here for, right? So I'm using a carving knife. If you don't have one, no worries. You can use any kind of kitchen knife you have. What's nice about the carving knives is they have a long blade. It lets you just make one pull at it, make a nice clean cut, so you don't have to do your sawing back and forth. But like I said, any kind of knife is going to get this job done when you slice. So I'm going to go in and make one cut. And now we want decently thin slices because we can put more than one on each piece. The thinner they cut, the more tender they're going to have in mouthfeel-wise when you go to chew them. A thicker piece is going to take more work to chew through than a thinner piece. So we're going to do just about a 1/4 inch or so. And I'm just going in, pulling straight down. And you can tell that not any meat or liquid is falling out of the meat as I slice it. If I didn't give it enough rest time, as I was laying these slices out, it's going to have liquid laying all the way around my board. And that way you know after you slice the meat and serve it, it's not going to be as tender, not going to be as juicy. And that's probably about enough for our slice. Oops. Plate up. You can do pork loins this way for anything. It doesn't just have to be for a slider. If you just wanted pork chops for dinner, you can cook it this exact same way, plate it up, and just have your slices of pork chops with your bacon jam. It doesn't
How
have
beautiful
to be
would that be on your holiday spread, Joe?
Yep, let's get a close up on that action.
Yummy. And I think it's always like way more impressive when you carve your meat at your holiday function, because like who likes to do that other than turkey?
When you do this at a holiday function, make an event. Yeah. Bring a cutting board out to your table, have your carving knife at your table, and then ask people who wants it and how many slices they want. And just serve it up for them. People will think you're being really nice, but you really just want to.
You could make like a really delicious, mustard sauce or a mayo sauce or cranberry sauce if people want to switch up their condiments a little bit.
Absolutely. Have some options.
Yeah, make like a build your own sandwich bar, which should be really delightful.
Everybody has turkey and ham for Christmas and Thanksgiving. Not everybody, though, has pork.
Well, in our 3-day session here, we're making a mustard, a flavored mustard at the end of the.
I won't ruin the surprise for you. It's blackberry. All right, let's make a sandwich, huh?
There you go.
We got our buns. Let's take a few slices here.
While we miss y'all personally, what's great about these little videos is there's nobody here to eat it, so we get all of it.
Oh, shucks. I was really hoping we didn't have to eat it.
Oh, look at how beautiful.
I think more bacon jam.
Well, luckily, I've got some on the plate right here.
Oh, even better.
All right, and now you can get a little filming going on this little spectacular spread we've got.
And that was day one, folks. So we made ourselves pork loin, turned it into a slider, put bacon jam on the slider, and then made ourselves our potato and lentil salad with some hot bacon vinaigrette. And we'll be back tomorrow. What are we making tomorrow?
Oh my gosh. We are making pear jam, butternut squash stuffed mushrooms with goat cheese. I love cheese, Joe.
Oh my gosh, I know. And this one, get excited. This is a big deal. This last one.
Pecan and dill have already tasted yet. Oh. So thinking outside of the boxes again, integrating those fall flavors, and what fun foods can we do to celebrate our caregivers back home? Thanks for helping out today, Joe.
Yeah. Thanks, guys.
See you tomorrow.